What if we told you that the most iconic spaghetti western almost never happened? The star didn't know his own movie was a hit, and the famous theme song started as a lullaby. From secret lawsuits to improvised costumes, bizarre TV edits to accidental casting decisions, Sergio Leone's groundbreaking 1964 masterpiece hides some of cinema's strangest production secrets. Here are the 15 weird facts you didn't know about A Fistful of Dollars. Fact 1. The title change no one told Clint about. Picture this. You're starring in what would become one of the most iconic westerns ever made. But you have absolutely no idea your movie is a massive hit across Europe because nobody told you they changed the title. That's exactly what happened to Clint Eastwood with A Fistful of Dollars in 1964. The film was originally called The Magnificent Stranger throughout the entire production process, and that's the only title Eastwood knew about. He had signed on to play this mysterious gunslinger character under that name, filmed all his scenes in the Spanish desert under that name, and wrapped production thinking he had just completed a low-budget Italian western called The Magnificent Stranger. But just 3 days before the movie was set to premiere in Italian theaters, the producers made a last-minute decision to change the title to Per un pugno di dollari, which translates to A Fistful of Dollars in English. This wasn't a small tweak or minor adjustment, it was a complete rebrand of the entire film. New posters had to be printed, new marketing materials created, and distributors had to be notified of the change. Here's the truly bizarre part. In all the chaos of this last-minute title switch, absolutely nobody thought to pick up the phone and tell Clint Eastwood about it. The star of the movie was completely left out of the loop. For weeks after the film's release, Eastwood remained completely unaware that his movie was becoming a phenomenon across Europe. He had no idea that audiences were lining up to see A Fistful of Dollars because, as far as he knew, he had never made a movie with that title. It wasn't until 3 weeks later that his agent showed him a glowing review in Variety magazine that he finally discovered the truth about his own film's success and its new identity. Fact 2. Akira Kurosawa made more money than expected. When legendary Japanese director Akira Kurosawa discovered that Sergio Leone had essentially copied his 1961 samurai film Yojimbo to create A Fistful of Dollars, he didn't just get angry, he got paid, and he got paid more than anyone expected. The similarities between the two films were impossible to ignore. Both featured a mysterious warrior who arrives in a town torn apart by two warring factions, plays both sides against each other for profit, and ultimately destroys both groups while walking away with the money. Leone had taken Kurosawa's plot almost scene by scene and simply transplanted it from feudal Japan to the American Old West. Kurosawa wasted no time in taking legal action. He wrote directly to Leone with a message that was both polite and pointed. "Signor Leone, I have just had the chance to see your film. It is a very fine film, but it is my film. Since Japan is a signatory of the Berne Convention on International Copyright, you must pay me." The lawsuit that followed resulted in one of the most lucrative copyright settlements in film history. Kurosawa and his production company Toho didn't just win, they struck gold. The court awarded them 15% of A Fistful of Dollars' worldwide gross profits, plus exclusive distribution rights for Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea. Here's where the story gets truly ironic. A Fistful of Dollars became such a massive international success that Kurosawa's 15% share ended up being worth significantly more money than he had earned from his original Yojimbo film. The copy made him richer than his own masterpiece ever did. The settlement also delayed the film's release in the United States for several years, as American distributors were terrified of being sued themselves. But for Kurosawa, this legal victory proved that sometimes being copied can be the most profitable thing that ever happens to your original work. Fact 3. Richard Harrison's million-dollar mistake. Sometimes the biggest career moves in Hollywood happen when you say no, and Richard Harrison's decision to turn down A Fistful of Dollars might be the most expensive no in film history, though it ended up launching one of cinema's greatest careers. Before Clint Eastwood ever heard of Sergio Leone, the Italian director was desperately searching for an American actor who could convincingly play a cowboy on a shoestring budget. Leone had already been turned down by a long list of established stars, including Henry Fonda, Charles Bronson, James Coburn, and several others who either wanted too much money or simply weren't interested in working on a low-budget Italian western. Richard Harrison seemed like the perfect solution. He was an American actor already living in Europe, had experience in Italian films, and had recently appeared in one of the very first spaghetti westerns called Duello nel Texas. Leone approached Harrison with the script and the offer to play the mysterious gunslinger. But Harrison had not enjoyed his previous experience making Italian westerns. The working conditions were rough, the budgets were tiny, and he felt the quality wasn't up to his standards. When Leone offered him the role that would become the man with no name, Harrison politely declined. However, Harrison didn't just walk away from the meeting. The producers had brought him a list of other available American actors and asked for his advice on who might work for the role. Harrison looked at the list and recommended a young television actor he knew from the Western series Rawhide, Clint Eastwood. Harrison knew that Eastwood could ride horses convincingly and had the right look for a Western hero. Years later, after watching Eastwood become an international superstar and the man with no name become one of cinema's most iconic characters, Harrison reflected on his decision with remarkable good humor. He famously said, "Maybe my greatest contribution to cinema was not doing A Fistful of Dollars and recommending Clint for the part." Fact 4. The Lullaby. That became a Western classic. The haunting trumpet theme that makes A Fistful of Dollars instantly recognizable wasn't originally written for dusty gunfights or tense standoffs. It started life as a gentle lullaby meant to put children to sleep. Ennio Morricone, who would become one of the most celebrated film composers in history, had written this melody years before he ever met Sergio Leone. The original composition was created for a stage production of Eugene O'Neill's Plays of the Sea, where it served as a peaceful, soothing piece designed to evoke calm and tranquility. When Leone approached Morricone about creating music for his Western, the director had very specific ideas about what he wanted. Leone was obsessed with using a piece called El Deguello from the John Wayne film Rio Bravo, believing it was an old traditional song in the public domain. This trumpet dirge had been used to signal that no quarter would be given in battle, and Leone thought it would be perfect for his climactic duel scene. Morricone was so offended by Leone's suggestion to simply steal another composer's work that he threatened to quit the project entirely. As Morricone later recalled, "I told him, if you use it, I quit. And I did in 1963, a year in which I was penniless." Leone eventually backed down and gave Morricone creative freedom to compose something original. Instead of writing a completely new piece, Morricone remembered his old lullaby from the O'Neill production. He took this gentle, peaceful melody and transformed it into something completely different by changing the instrumentation and adding that distinctive Mexican trumpet flavor that Leone wanted. The composer secretly incorporated his lullaby without telling Leone where the melody came from. What makes this transformation even more remarkable is how perfectly the reimagined lullaby captured the mood Leone was seeking, a haunting, death-like quality that signaled the end was near, while still maintaining an almost hypnotic, dreamlike quality that draws listeners in completely. Fact 5. Clint assembled his own costume. One of the most iconic looks in movie history wasn't created by a professional costume designer or a team of Hollywood stylists. It was put together by Clint Eastwood himself during a series of shopping trips around Los Angeles before he left for Spain. The extremely low budget of A Fistful of Dollars meant there was virtually no money for elaborate costumes or wardrobe departments. When Eastwood signed on to play the mysterious gunslinger, he was essentially told to figure out his own look and bring whatever he thought would work for the character. Eastwood approached this challenge like a scavenger hunt across different parts of Los Angeles. He started by going to a sports shop on Hollywood Boulevard, where he bought a pair of black jeans that would become one of the character's signature pieces. These weren't fancy Western pants or period-accurate clothing, they were just regular black jeans from a sporting goods store. For his hat, Eastwood drove to Santa Monica and visited a wardrobe supply company where he found the wide-brimmed hat that would cast those famous shadows across his face in countless close-up shots. The hat wasn't custom-made or specially designed for the film, it was simply something that looked right to Eastwood when he tried it on. The trademark cigars that the man with no name constantly chews came from an upscale shop in Beverly Hills. Even though Eastwood was a non-smoker in real life, he felt the cigars were essential to creating the right character attitude and bought a supply to take with him to Spain. Perhaps most surprisingly, Eastwood brought along items he had used during his years starring in the television Western series Rawhide. His gun belt, pistol, spurs, and the tan rough-out leather boots that became part of his signature look were all pieces he had worn playing Rowdy Yates on television. The only piece of his costume that Eastwood didn't source himself was the famous poncho, which was purchased once the production reached Spain, and would become the most recognizable part of his entire look. Fact 6. The bizarre ABC TV prologue. When A Fistful of Dollars finally made its way to American television in 1975, ABC network executives were so uncomfortable with the film's immoral hero that they commissioned an entirely new opening scene to completely change the character's motivation. The problem was that Sergio Leone had created a protagonist who wasn't really a hero at all. The man with no name was a cold, calculating opportunist who manipulated two warring families purely for personal profit, showing little concern for innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire. This morally ambiguous character was revolutionary for Westerns, but it made 1970s television executives extremely nervous about broadcasting the film to American families. ABC's solution was to hire director Monte Hellman, who was known for his work on independent films like Two-Lane Blacktop, to create a 4.5-minute prologue that would give the mysterious gunslinger a noble reason for his actions. The network wanted viewers to see him as a good guy working for justice, rather than a ruthless mercenary working for money. In this newly created opening scene, character actor Harry Dean Stanton appeared as a government official or prison warden who offers the man with no name a chance at a pardon in exchange for cleaning up the lawless town of San Miguel. The scene was designed to make it clear that everything the character did afterward was sanctioned by the authorities and therefore morally justified. The most awkward part of this addition was that neither Sergio Leone nor Clint Eastwood had anything to do with creating it. Since Eastwood wasn't available to reshoot scenes, they used a body double who was only filmed from behind, while close-up shots of Eastwood's eyes were taken from other parts of the original film and spliced into the new footage. This prologue aired 3 times on ABC between 1975 and 1977, before quietly disappearing from television broadcasts. The scene completely undermined Leone's original vision by turning his immoral anti-hero into a conventional lawman working for the government. Fact 7. The non-smoking smoker's method acting. In one of the most unusual examples of method acting in film history, Clint Eastwood deliberately made himself miserable every day on set by smoking cigars he absolutely hated, all because he believed the unpleasant experience would help him become a more convincing villain. Eastwood was a complete non-smoker in his personal life, and had never had any interest in tobacco products. But when he was developing the character of the man with no name, he decided that cigars were essential to creating the right look and attitude for this mysterious, morally questionable gunslinger. The problem was that every time he put a cigar in his mouth, the taste was absolutely revolting to him. Rather than finding a way around this problem or asking for fake cigars that wouldn't taste bad, Eastwood made a surprising decision. He realized that the foul, bitter taste of the tobacco actually put him in the perfect frame of mind to play such a cold and ruthless character. The physical discomfort and unpleasant sensation helped him tap into the darker emotions he needed for the role. Sergio Leone was initially concerned about Eastwood smoking since he knew the actor didn't smoke in real life. But Eastwood convinced the director that the cigars were crucial to his performance. Leone later commented that he could see how the taste affected Eastwood's facial expressions, giving him a naturally sour and intimidating look that worked perfectly for the character. Throughout the 8-week filming period in the Spanish desert, Eastwood continued this daily routine of smoking cigars that made him feel sick, treating it as a form of physical preparation for each scene. He would often keep an unlit cigar clenched between his teeth even when not filming, maintaining that unpleasant taste throughout the day to stay in character. This commitment to using genuine discomfort as a tool for character development became one of Eastwood's signature approaches to acting, and the cigar chewing became such an iconic part of The Man with No Name that it continued throughout all 3 films in the trilogy. Fact 8. Bathroom breaks behind rocks. The glamorous world of movie-making took on a decidedly unglamorous reality for everyone involved in A Fistful of Dollars, where the $200,000 budget was so tight that basic human necessities became a daily challenge in the Spanish wilderness. When Sergio Leone chose to film in the remote desert locations around Madrid and Almeria, he picked these spots specifically because they looked authentically like the American Old West and cost almost nothing to use. However, this decision came with some unexpected consequences that no one had fully considered during the planning stages. The production couldn't afford the standard Hollywood luxuries that actors and crew members had come to expect on film sets. There were no air-conditioned trailers for the stars to retreat to between takes, no catering trucks with hot meals, and most problematically, no portable bathroom facilities of any kind for the cast and crew to use during the long shooting days. Clint Eastwood later described the primitive working conditions with characteristic bluntness, explaining that the entire production operated without electricity and that nobody had access to a trailer with basic facilities like a toilet. When nature called during the 8-week filming period, everyone from the biggest star to the lowest-paid crew member had to find privacy the same way, by walking away from the cameras and finding a large rock or bush to hide behind. This lack of basic amenities wasn't just an inconvenience for a day or two, but became the standard operating procedure for the entire 2-month production schedule. The cast and crew developed an unspoken system for maintaining some dignity in this situation, with people taking turns to wander off into the rocky Spanish landscape whenever necessary. Despite these less-than-ideal working conditions, the remote desert locations contributed significantly to the film's authentic atmosphere and gritty visual style. The harsh environment and primitive facilities may have been uncomfortable, but they helped create the raw, unforgiving mood that made the film so memorable and influential. Fact 9. The silent film that wasn't silent. A Fistful of Dollars was filmed almost like a silent movie, with every single word of dialogue added months later, in recording studios far from the dusty Spanish locations where the action was shot. This unusual production method wasn't an artistic choice but rather a practical necessity born from the film's international nature and extremely tight budget. The cast included Italian, German, Spanish, and American actors who all spoke different languages, making it impossible to record usable dialogue during filming even if they had wanted to. During the 8 weeks of shooting in Spain, the cameras rolled completely silently, while actors mouthed their lines or sometimes didn't bother speaking at all. Sergio Leone would shout directions in Italian while Clint Eastwood responded in English, and the Spanish crew members communicated in their own language, creating a chaotic multilingual environment where no one could understand everyone else. The entire soundtrack, including all dialogue, sound effects, and background noises, was created later during post-production in Italian recording studios. For the original Italian release, every actor's voice was replaced by Italian voice actors, including Eastwood's performance, which was dubbed by Italian actor Enrico Maria Salerno. What makes this situation even stranger is that when the film was finally prepared for American release in 1967, 3 years after it was made, Clint Eastwood had to go into a recording studio and dub his own voice for his own performance. He essentially had to react all of his scenes using only his voice while watching himself on screen. This meant that for the first 3 years of the film's existence, audiences around the world were hearing Eastwood's character speak in Italian, German, or Spanish, but never in Eastwood's actual voice. The voice that American audiences associate with the man with no name was recorded years after Eastwood had finished playing the character, making it a completely separate performance from what was captured on camera in the Spanish desert. Fact 10. The fake American names deception. When A Fistful of Dollars was prepared for American release, the filmmakers orchestrated an elaborate identity swap that transformed an entirely European production team into what appeared to be a group of American movie makers with familiar-sounding names. The problem facing the distributors was that very few spaghetti westerns had been released in the United States at that time, and American audiences had no familiarity with Italian filmmakers or actors. The producers worried that moviegoers would be reluctant to see a western made by people with foreign names, especially since westerns were considered such a distinctly American genre. The solution was to give key members of the cast and crew completely fictional American identities for the film's credits. Director Sergio Leone, who would later become one of the most celebrated filmmakers in the world, was listed in American prints as Bob Robertson. This bland, all-American name was chosen to make audiences think they were watching a film directed by someone from Middle America rather than Rome. Composer Ennio Morricone, whose innovative score was one of the film's most distinctive elements, became Dan Savio in the American credits. His revolutionary music, which included whistling, electric guitars, and unusual sound effects, was presented as the work of someone who sounded like he could have grown up listening to country music on American radio. The lead villain, played by acclaimed Italian actor Gian Maria Volonté, was transformed into Johnny Wells for American audiences. Even supporting actors and crew members received similar treatment, with Italian names like Bruno Carotenuto becoming Carol Brown and stuntman Benito Stefanelli becoming Benny Reeves. This deception was so complete that early American reviews and articles about the film treated it as though it had been made by Americans working in Europe, rather than recognizing it as a purely European production. The fake names remained in American prints for years until the film's reputation was so well established that the real identities of its creators could be safely revealed without hurting box office sales. Fact 11. The Same Poncho's 3-film journey. The most recognizable piece of clothing in Western movie history went through an incredible transformation over the course of 3 films, accumulating battle damage and developing a complex backstory that the filmmakers had to creatively work around as the trilogy progressed. Unlike most Hollywood productions where multiple identical costumes are created for continuity purposes and stunt work, Clint Eastwood wore the exact same poncho throughout A Fistful of Dollars for a few dollars more, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. This single piece of clothing was never cleaned, repaired, or replaced during the 3-year period when these films were made. The poncho's journey began in Spain, where it was purchased during the production of the first film. By the end of A Fistful of Dollars, the poncho had accumulated several bullet holes from the climactic shootout scene where the villain Ramon fires his rifle directly at Eastwood's character. These holes were real damage to the actual costume piece, not special effects or movie magic. When production began on for a few dollars more, the filmmakers faced a problem. The bullet holes from the first film were clearly visible and didn't make sense in the context of the new story. Their creative solution was to have Eastwood wear the poncho backwards in several scenes, positioning the bullet holes behind his back where they couldn't be seen by the camera. By the time The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was filmed, the poncho had become thoroughly weathered and discolored from years of use in dusty desert conditions and exposure to sunlight. The original olive green and white coloring had faded to a brownish hue, giving it an authentically aged appearance that actually enhanced the character's rugged look. Eastwood has confirmed in interviews that he kept this single poncho throughout the entire trilogy and still owns it today. He has stated that he preserves it in a glass case, making it one of the most valuable and historically significant costume pieces in cinema history. Fact 12. Spain. Pretending to be Mexico problem. Movie audiences were supposed to believe they were watching events unfold in a rough Mexican border town, but careful viewers can spot clear evidence that the filmmakers never actually left Europe to create their version of the American Old West. The story of A Fistful of Dollars takes place in the fictional town of San Miguel, which is described as being located on the border between Mexico and the United States during the 1860s. To create this setting, Sergio Leone chose filming locations in the desert regions around Almeria and Tabernas in southern Spain, areas that bore a strong visual resemblance to the American Southwest with their rocky landscapes and sparse vegetation. However, the Spanish countryside couldn't completely disguise its true identity, and several distinctly European elements accidentally made their way into the final film. The most obvious giveaway appears in scenes showing the hills and landscape beyond the town, where the unmistakable ruins of Tabernas Castle can be clearly seen sitting on a hilltop in the background. This medieval fortress has a very specific and well-documented history that places it firmly in the wrong continent and the wrong century for the film's story. Tabernas Castle was built and used by the Spanish monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella during their military siege of Almeria in the 1480s, nearly 400 years before the events depicted in the movie were supposed to take place. The presence of this ancient European castle creates a jarring anachronism for anyone familiar with Spanish history or architecture. The fortress represents a style of medieval construction that never existed in the American territories during the 1800s, making it impossible for such a structure to appear in an authentic Mexican border town of that era. Another dead giveaway for geography experts is the complete absence of cacti in any of the desert scenes. Cacti are native exclusively to North and South America, so their total absence from the landscape immediately reveals that the filming took place in the Old World rather than the New World that the story claims to depict. Fact 13. The One. Bullet Revolver Gamble. The climactic showdown of A Fistful of Dollars contains one of the most reckless acts of confidence in movie history, where the hero deliberately puts himself at a massive disadvantage by trusting his life to pure chance rather than skill or preparation. In the final confrontation between Joe and the ruthless Ramon, viewers watch as Joe methodically loads his revolver in preparation for the duel that will determine who lives and who dies. But instead of filling all 6 chambers with bullets to maximize his chances of survival, Joe makes the bewildering decision to load only a single cartridge into his weapon. After placing just 1 bullet into the cylinder, Joe then spins it rapidly, completely randomizing which chamber will align with the firing pin when he pulls the trigger. This action turns what should be a test of marksmanship and quick-draw skills into a game of Russian roulette, where Joe has given himself only a 1 in 6 chance of his gun actually firing when he needs it most. The mathematical reality of this decision is staggering. Joe is essentially betting his life on a 16.7% probability that the single bullet will be in the correct position when he draws and fires. If the cylinder stops with any of the 5 empty chambers aligned with the hammer, his gun will produce nothing but a useless click, while Ramon's fully loaded weapon delivers a fatal shot. From a practical gunfighting standpoint, this strategy makes absolutely no sense. An experienced gunslinger would want every possible advantage in a life-or-death situation, not deliberately handicap himself with such overwhelming odds of failure. A smart fighter would load all 6 chambers and carry extra ammunition, not reduce his firepower to a single random shot. The scene becomes even more puzzling when you consider that Joe has no logical reason to limit himself to 1 bullet. He isn't running low on ammunition. He isn't trying to prove a point about fairness. And he isn't operating under any rules that restrict how many shots he can use in the confrontation. Fact 14. The September Suicide Release Strategy. A Fistful of Dollars achieved one of the most unlikely success stories in film history by becoming a massive hit despite being released during what the Italian film industry considered to be the absolute worst possible time to launch a new movie. The film's distributors faced a serious problem when it came time to release the movie in Italian theaters. No major distributor wanted to take a chance on what appeared to be a risky investment, a low-budget Western made by a relatively unknown director, starring an American television actor that most Europeans had never heard of. The film seemed like such an uncertain prospect that established distribution companies simply refused to handle it. When a distributor was finally found, they made a decision that seemed designed to guarantee the film's failure. A Fistful of Dollars was scheduled for release on September 12, 1964, which was widely known throughout the Italian film industry as the single worst month of the year for movie sales. September was traditionally when theaters experienced their lowest attendance, as families were returning from summer vacations and students were going back to school, leaving little time or money for entertainment. The timing was so notoriously bad that releasing a film in September was often seen as a way for studios to quietly dump movies they had no confidence in, allowing them to fulfill contractual obligations while expecting minimal returns. Industry professionals often referred to September releases as being sent out to die at the box office. Despite this seemingly catastrophic release strategy, A Fistful of Dollars defied every expectation and became a phenomenon that spread across Italy through word of mouth. The film's popularity grew steadily throughout its theatrical run, eventually grossing 2.7 billion lire, which was equivalent to about $4,375,000. This unexpected success made A Fistful of Dollars the highest-grossing Italian film up to that point in cinema history, proving that sometimes the worst possible circumstances can lead to the most remarkable outcomes when audiences discover something truly special. Fact 15. The Interpreter. Stuntman Communication Method. One of the most important relationships on the set of A Fistful of Dollars wasn't between the director and his star, but between Clint Eastwood and his stuntman, who became the crucial bridge that made the entire production possible despite a complete language barrier. Sergio Leone spoke only Italian and had virtually no knowledge of English, while Clint Eastwood arrived in Spain speaking only English, with no ability to communicate in Italian. This created an immediate and serious problem for a film production that required constant communication between the director and his lead actor about everything from basic blocking to complex emotional scenes. The solution came in the form of Benito Stefanelli, who was hired as Eastwood's stuntman but quickly became much more valuable as the production's unofficial interpreter. Stefanelli was fluent in both Italian and English, making him the only person on set who could effectively translate between Leone and Eastwood during the 8-week filming period. This meant that every piece of direction Leone wanted to give to Eastwood had to pass through Stefanelli first. When Leone wanted to explain how he envisioned a particular scene or discuss changes to the character's motivation, he would speak to Stefanelli in Italian, who would then relay the information to Eastwood in English. Eastwood's questions, concerns, or suggestions would then travel back through the same chain in reverse. This three-way communication system became so essential to the production that Stefanelli was constantly present on set, even during scenes where his stunt work wasn't needed. He essentially became Leone's voice in English and Eastwood's voice in Italian, facilitating not just basic instructions but also the creative discussions that shaped the character and the film. The arrangement worked so well that Stefanelli continued to work with Leone on his subsequent films, eventually appearing as an actor in several of them. His role as the communication lifeline between Leone and Eastwood proved that sometimes the most important job on a film set isn't listed in the official credits.